Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Ooh, you all sound like you had your coffee already. You're good? You're ready? All right, well, it's nice to be here with you this morning. It's my pleasure to be invited to speak at this symposium. And I'm going to admit, when I was first approached about presenting today, I was like, me? No, I'm no economist. I'm not trained in this area. It's not my area of expertise. And they told me the topic was exchange rate regimes and nominal anchors. And I said, nominal anchors, what that? Me must present on that? I think I've heard Constant talk about it before, and he explained it again this morning, but that's not my area of expertise. But then they said, no, you can give the media's perspective, the public's perspective as to where this is going. And I said, okay, I can do that. I've been covering this topic for some years now as a journalist and certainly tracking the developments over time closely, especially since the introduction of the BOJ's foreign exchange intervention and trading tool, BFIXIT, in 2017. And I do have some insights to share with you this morning about how the conversation around the exchange rate might be finally turning a corner. We're not there yet, but I'm seeing signs that we're on the way. So to tell this story, I'm actually going to go back into the recent past, between 2017 and now. Remember, 2017 was when BFIXIT was introduced. And I could go back much further, decades in fact, but I'm not here to give you a history lesson this morning because most of you are quite familiar with where we're coming from. A dollar that we all know was stronger than the US dollar throughout most of the 70s, and the traumatizing experiences with devaluation thereafter. The hawkish obsession with the dollar those experiences have caused, to the point where in the attempt to shift the nominal anchor from the dollar to inflation, the authorities are finding it extremely difficult to overcome the nation's historic PTDD. Any guesses what that means? Post-traumatic what? Post-traumatic dollar disorder. And so they've had this aggressive media campaign. You have the catchy jingles. Inflation's not the enemy. Stable, predictable, and forgive my voice. You have the reggae-themed messaging, no inflation monster shall prosper. You know that one, right? Tyrus Riley. And all of this to try to infiltrate the minds of the PTDD sufferers. But Bob Marley said it.
Thing about music when it hits you. I say one good thing about music. When
it hits you, feel no pain. So perhaps the BOJ is onto something with this music therapy to try to address this psychological disorder that has caused so much pain. And say, I didn't let you suffer through my singing voice again. I'll let you have Bob for that one. But like I said, I want to take you through the more recent history, 2017 to now, the era of BFIXIT. So Constant showed you a version of this chart as well. And this just shows the price of US dollars to the Jamaican dollar between July 2017, and I think I did this about 2 days ago. So over the past 2 years, it's fluctuated between about $125 to now about $138 to 1 US. And as you can see, look at my little scribblings there in red. We've had 6 major peaks and valleys, so we're at peak number 6 now. And each time we've hit one of those peaks, with the exception of this last time, which I'm coming to, we've heard this public outcry. Do something about the dollar. You guys have to do something about the dollar. Oh, the BOJ needs to step in. We're losing money. Where is the finance minister? This is madness. And the voices were especially loud around this time last year and leading into August. So that third peak that you would see there, that's when you heard a lot of talk coming from the JMEA. They were on every radio program. You had the PSOJ speaking out, the opposition, of course, raising concern, and others in the public and the business sector crying out about how this hurts their business because it's now more expensive to import things, and we're an island that's so heavily import dependent, and this raises the cost of living for everyone. And the BOJs, they're saying, no, but look, inflation is low. That's what you should care about. But people with PTDD don't want to hear that. You can't talk to a man with PTDD about inflation. They can't hear that through their psychological trauma. So Dr. Clark was forced to come, I hope you like that picture. It's your official photo on the website. He's forced to come out and do some damage control and meet with business interests and the manufacturers and try to calm them down and give assurances that this is the new paradigm, that we're now in an era where the exchange rate fluctuates. It goes up, it goes down. There are no guarantees. And one-way movement is in the past. But still, the central bank was called upon to intervene, and they did. They sold, I think it was about $100 million over a period of about 5 weeks in a series of flash auctions. And they also activated the sell side of BFIXIT. And eventually we started seeing the rate coming down again, and heads started to cool, at least temporarily. And I would have genuinely described the reaction from the public as panicked until those interventions took place. And then again, as recently as April of this year, which actually was during Valley number 4, so not peak number 4, Valley number 4, when the dollar was actually down, you heard PSOJ President Howard Mitchell starting to raise a cry about the dollar again. And he went as far as to call for dollarization or a fixed exchange rate, which he used interchangeably, even though they mean different things. And then I heard economist Dr. Damian King with the clap back saying, listen, do you even know what you're asking for when you propose these measures? Do you truly understand what moving to these types of regimes entail? Because you can't just talk about changing your entire system in a vacuum without talking about the supporting measures that would need to be implemented to accompany that change. And I'm going to tell you from a personal experience too, the arguments that Dr. King was making resonated with me because I'm originally from Belize. I'm from a different country. I've lived here 11 years now. And that country has had a fixed exchange rate for as long as I've known myself. And while it sounds good to say that your dollar is 2-to-1 and your dollar is strong, what you can give up for that, and in the case of that country, is availability. So in Belize, it's hard to get US dollars. You have to jump through hoops, and I'm telling you from personal experience, I've known the exchange rate all my life to be 2-to-1, and I never thought about how the country managed to maintain that until I moved here 11 years ago and experienced a different system. Because here, I can walk into a Cambio with Jamaican dollars and walk out with US dollars in just 5 minutes. Just show my ID, virtually no questions asked, and that's that. Now there, that's not quite, it's not, that's not quite the exchange rate, but anyway, you get the point. So there now, it's a whole lot different. If I need 500 US dollars for a quick trip, I have to apply to the central bank or the Ministry of Finance for permission to purchase US dollars. Then I have to show up at the bank very early in the morning and join a line as soon as they open, even before they open, to ensure that they don't run out of their very limited supply for the day, which tends to happen very quickly. And then I have to wait, and then I have to present my authorization, and then I have to hope that they have the amount that I need. Or what you can do if you know somebody, you call a friend who works at the bank and tell them, put up some US for me because I need some for whatever date. And I've spoken about this on my radio show as well, because your economy has to be in a certain place to maintain a fixed exchange rate. And if we're going to be talking about different regimes, then those parts of the conversation have to be in the discussion as well. Because in Belize, although the country earns foreign exchange from things like tourism and agricultural exports, it would seem it's not enough to meet the demand for US dollars. And so they have to maintain these very strict controls on who can purchase US dollars and how much they can buy at a time. And what happens in a situation where the demand is not being met is that people turn to whatever sources they can find. The black market. And what does the black market mean? Lots of it is drug money. And I suspect it's one of the reasons that that country ended up in very serious problems a couple of years ago with correspondent banking and the de-risking crisis, when all of the large international banks decided to cut off the entire country from the rest of the financial world because the anti-money laundering concerns were simply too great. So while it's been a source of great pride for people from my country to say our exchange rate is 2 to 1, our dollar strong, what has been the cost of that? And so when somebody from there, from home says to me, ha ha ha, you live in Jamaica, they have monopoly money, 100 and odd to 1, I can easily counter with, well, guess what? I still earn more than you do in US dollar terms. So what? And my standard of living right now is better than yours. So how exactly is that 2 to 1 benefiting you? Yeah? See, it's a perfect example. It's a perfect example of how the foreign exchange rate does not necessarily determine the strength or the weakness of an economy. And so these practical world examples need to be a part of the conversation as well, because I know it's difficult for people to understand economic concepts. Inflation just sounds so out there. Maybe we should just start saying something like the cost of goods and services rose by whatever this month, yeah? Using more practical real-world examples in the communication strategy. And I know it's something difficult for people to understand as well because we've been tethered to that concept for so long, but I think examples like these help to get the message across. And this brings me to the present. Who knows what that number is? Huh? What is it? It was the highest. It was on Thursday last week, actually. 138.10. It's the weakest the Jamaican dollar has ever traded against the US dollar in history. And we hit that point, like I said, last week, Thursday. The previous record, the previous low was 137.96 on August 24 last year. That was peak 4 when all the voices were talking. So passing 138 was a new milestone. And in its latest swing, the dollar lost 6% of its value in 5 weeks. But there was something very unusual about this milestone, something that certainly caught my attention. Because as a journalist tracking the dollar, I've been watching to see when it would cross 138 so that I could report that it's crossed 138. And I've told the reporters in the nationwide newsroom to watch and see when it crosses 138. It's happened, and so I was expecting the usual reactions, the usual, oh my God, we've hit another record low, and the dollar is crap, and we're losing money, and intervene, and use some of the reserves because the market is too disorderly. But strangely, the usual critics were pretty quiet this time. The JMEA and the PSOJ, typically the loudest voices on this issue, they had no comment. And it's not that we didn't call them for one, because we called, and they said no comment. Oh, we called, Minister Clark can tell you, we called him too. And he gave my team an earful. He was very pleased. He said, why do people always call when it's bad? Why don't you call me in a few weeks when the dollar strengthens again? Well, Minister, it turns out you didn't have much to worry about because nobody was really complaining this time. Well, let me not say nobody, right? Because opposition spokesman on finance, Mark Golding, That was not shade, sorry, that's not shade. He did send out a statement about a week before it hit 138, calling for the government to respond to what he called foreign currency market woes. But that was about it. The lone voice in the wilderness, at least that I heard. I don't know if you all heard other voices on it. And in this recent history of the last 2 years, I found that rather astonishing, that the dollar hits an all-time low in trading against the US, barely any reaction, moving on, next story. And it says to me that the efforts to shift the public's focus to a different anchor are slowly beginning to bear fruit. So now are people beating down my door to hear about inflation? Not yet, but it says a lot that they're not beating down my door on the exchange rate. But what will happen if it hits 140, 145, 150? If we move outside that band that we've come to expect now, 125 to 138, because that's a different psychological barrier now. Will there still be silence? I don't know. Maybe we'll hear the voices clamoring again. Maybe we won't, especially after it goes back down as it's been doing. Case in point, the day after it hit 138, it went back down under 138. So this two-way movement of the exchange rate is our new reality, and it seems people may finally be starting to get it. They may finally be starting to realize there's no need for panic. And it reminded me of a conversation I had a few months ago. Constant had invited me and some other journalists to speak with one of their consultants on communications who's originally from Russia. She was saying how Russia has gone through this same process. They used to be obsessed with the value of the ruble. Every time the exchange rate changes, there's a public outcry. And then she said, no, the ruble declines, no reaction. And I remember smirking and thinking, I wonder if Jamaica will ever get to that point. It might take us years before we see no reaction to these market movements, given how deep our PTDD is. Who would have thunk that just a year later, here we are, the dollar's down, and virtually no reaction. Not that I'm calling the opposition nobody, but there's a political agenda, and the concern is more credible when you have non-political voices raising the issue. So that's where I'm going to leave it for this morning.